Bro, Shanoya Douglas. Shanoya Douglas just OD'd at champs, sweeping the 100. We already spoke about that yesterday, right? We saw what she did there, running the 10 not like she did all that, 10.98. The 200, the 200 to me was by far way more impressive for so many different reasons. 22.36 seconds by Shanoya Douglas to win the Class 1 Girls 200 meters at Jamaican Boys and Girls Championships in Kingston. So many reasons why this performance was so much more impressive than that 100 and why I think this was so special. First off, she ran this into a negative 1.6 meter per second headwind. Now, you can take headwind into consideration in different capacities. People may question it, whatever, but that is impressive, regardless of what you think. Running that, 22.36 into a negative 1.6 headwind, massive performance compared to what she did yesterday the other day in the 100, right? Where she was left sleeping in the blocks. And I said, okay, that 10.98 probably could have been like a 10.95 at least, if not potentially faster. This 200, she knew, nah, I'm not sleeping in the blocks. I'm getting out as fast as possible, and she was out like a rocket. By the time we got to 50 meters, around the curve, the race was over. She was on a mission to not only win this title, but run as fast as she could because she knew that she was in the form of her life. By the time you get to, 150 meters into the race, it's a question of, okay, what time is she going to run? And this is actually where I see a big room for improvement. She starts to lean for the line way too early. Like way too early. Yes, 22.36. I'm not saying she would have run 22.2 or something like that, but she definitely would have been closer to 22.30, right? Or something along those lines. She was leaning drastically before the line. And she just had that excitement. She had that drive. She was like, listen, I know that I'm doing something special. Let me get to that line as quick as possible so the time can come up. The time flashed up as 22.33, but, corrected to 22.36. But again, she was leaning a little bit earlier than she probably should have. She was like, listen, again, link in the description for that full race. But regardless, in terms of this race, 22.36 breaks the Jamaican U20 national record. The previous record was set by Brianna Williams, who ran 22.50 seconds all the way back in 2018 at the U20 championships out in, I think it was out in Europe, right? Tampere or something like that. But even more importantly, well, I don't know, but whatever. She's now equal, so Shanoya Douglas is equal number 10 all time when talking about U20 athletes in the 200 meters. Equal number 10 all time. So she moves up that list as well. But also what I think is very special here is she now is the 18th fastest Jamaican athlete in the history of the 200. Like all-time history. We're talking about, of course, we know the Elaine Thompson-Herahs and the, Sharika Jacksons, right? Sharika with the 21.4, Elaine, with the, 21.5. And then you have all the others between Veronica and Marlene Oddie and Grace Jackson. Like, all those women who have run, 21 seconds. But then you get into the other realm where you have athletes like a Kavona Davis, right? You have Ashanti Moore. You have Brianna Liston. Some of these other athletes who didn't run these times when they were U20, but Shanoya Douglas is creeping right up on them. And let's be clear, Brianna Liston, she's kind of, she's just, getting into her own in a sense, right? She's really young. I'm going to talk about some of these other 200 athletes in a second. But I think that this is very special. Again, Jamaican U20 record, equal number 10 all time in world U20 history, and she's the 18th fastest Jamaican 200 meter sprinter in history, like all time, senior U20, like all that. Shanoya Douglas did something very special here. Now, two things I want to talk about. One thing mainly, but I did forget to mention when I spoke about her in the 100 that she actually now is the 2024 World U20 silver medalist in the 200. So if y'all remember just a couple weeks ago, right, Adeja Haj, she was, had that silent ban. Check out the video that I did on the live stream talking about that. But she lost her gold medal in the 200 from 2024. Shanoya Douglas, she actually had won the bronze medal, so she's now upgraded to the silver. So big performances that she's kind of justifies that silver medal that she won all those years ago, really kind of coming into fruition. Obviously, many people, I'll say last year was the first year that she was really put on my radar. I went to champs, I went to, senior championships or senior trials, whatever, for Jamaica. So that's when I really got acquainted with her. But listen, she is getting acquainted with the world. If y'all not familiar with her, get familiar, of course. But what I want to highlight, because I did it the other day with the 100, is where she kind of fits in as it relates to the 200-meter sprinting landscape for Jamaica as they move on to the world stage. And this is where I personally have a few more questions to a degree when talking about the depth of Jamaican 200-meter sprinting for the women, right? I think this is very promising because Shanoya Douglas is kind of going to hopefully lead, another surge or potential surge of, strong 200-meter sprinters in the, for Jamaica going forward. But when I look back at the previous year, at the World Championships last year, Shericka Jackson entered Tokyo 2025 as a defending world champion. So that means that Jamaica gets a wild card, right? They get 4 women who are able to compete in the 200. But they weren't able to field a team of 4 women. They only sent 3 women to the World Championships. Shericka Jackson, defending world champ. You had Ashanti Moore. She won Jamaican National Championships. And then you had Gabrielle Matthews. And we saw her do pretty well at the NCAAs earlier this year, right? Running 22.55, I think. Someone could cross-check me in the comments there. But I say that to say it does to a degree, and I'm going to go through just some different names. I'm not dismissing it, but it does kind of highlight how there is a slight lack of depth when it comes to Jamaican 200-meter sprinting right now, and their potential to very well compete with the rest of the world. There shouldn't be, and I think many people can honestly say that Jamaica on the men's side over the previous years, there was no reason why they were not able to field, a full team of 200-meter athletes, right? You saw, you had, I think they would send, 1 or 2, maybe 3 guys every so often in the 200, right, to the world champs or to the Olympics, maybe 1 or 2 over the past couple of years. And then, they finally kind of got things back rolling. But that was kind of like, that's not a good state for the Jamaican 200-meter sprinting to be in coming off of Usain Bolt. There is an aspect, I know people gonna come for me, but I'm gonna be clear. There's an aspect of Jamaican women's 200-meter sprinting not being on the level that many of us would expect it to be at, considering the talent pool that Jamaica does have. Again, there's no reason to me that Jamaica, the sprinting capital of the world, the fastest women in the world, all that stuff, right? There's no reason that they shouldn't have, they can't fill all 4 spots if they have a wild card to the world champs. So I say all this to say, I think Shanoya Douglas and this 22.36 is going to further build on some of those names who are, hopefully continuing to make a wave, and then potentially motivate some of the others who might have kind of taken a step back a little bit to get back into that good form that will hopefully kind of build that base for Jamaica in the women's 200. So, for example, we know Shericka Jackson, obviously, second fastest all time, one of the greatest all time in the 200, et cetera, et cetera. She's dealt with injuries and setbacks, but she's locked in, right? Thompson-Herah, she's kind of getting back into the fold. We did see her run 22.6 as her 200-meter opener just not too long ago. That's why I was saying the 200 actually seems like an easier path for Thompson-Herah, but it's a whole nother discussion. As I noted, you have Shanoya Douglas, right? Brianna Liston, she's, I know people were even telling me that she's more of a stronger 200-meter sprinter, considering she's run 22.3. But considering the injuries that she's dealt with and her slow return, it's a question on if she's going to focus in on the 200 this year. Maybe, maybe not, but she is someone. Gabrielle Matthews, I mentioned, she, of course, went to World Championships last year. She did very well in the NCAA this year. She's, looking to make some progress throughout 2026. Someone to keep a lookout for. You also have Kavona Davis. She moved back to Jamaica and I think is now training with Gun Mills. Someone could cross-check me there, but used to be the coach flow in Texas. Ashanti Moore, Jamaican national champion last year, and she went to the semifinals at the World Championships. She's like 26, 27 years old, so almost like a resurgence in her career after, some up and down years. Naisha Berger, she was one who, she was in NCAA. She was one who I almost saw as like also a next generation sprinter in the 200 for Jamaica. Didn't have a great 2025, but she is definitely in the conversation. So these are just a few of the different names of women who should, in my opinion, be really strong 200-meter sprinters and build up that Jamaican 200-meter sprinting base as they look to contend with the rest of the world. Obviously, Commonwealth Games in 2026, and then next year, World Champs in 2027, Olympics in 2028. As I said, I was a little disappointed that Jamaica wasn't able to send 4 women in the 200 last year, considering their history in the sprints, considering their history in the 200. So going into the next couple years, going into 2026, going into 27, 28, etc., they should always be able to field a full team of athletes, right? And I think Shanoya Douglas with this 22.36, massive performance, U20 Jamaican record, all those accolades I noted, I hopefully I hope that this kind of reinvigorates a spark, under all these other athletes that I named to say, listen, nah, we not falling behind. We could still be in this conversation. Now, granted, I'm not saying that they gonna go out and dominate and they gonna take like, nah. I'm gonna leave that to all y'all in the comments. All y'all Jamaicans. Listen, I always support y'all, but I'm just saying I think that Jamaica should be able to really keep themselves in that 200-meter conversation for the greater good of the sport. But listen, Shanoya Douglas, she dominated this weekend. Jamaican high school boys and girls champs. I'm probably gonna do a video tomorrow or maybe Monday, just highlighting some of the other performances from champs. Since I didn't get to go this year. And then on let me think, on Tuesday, I'm also gonna do a live stream just talking about all the other results that happened from the weekend. With Gout in Australia. You had some races in Texas. You had some other stuff going down, some NCAA marks. So we'll talk about all that. But let me know what you think about Shanoya Douglas. Amazing performance. Appreciate y'all.